who is usually the epitome of kindness, has recently started hanging out with a new friend. I can't shake the feeling that this friend isn't the best influence on her. It's not that I want to control her choices, but there's that old saying about the company you keep. I've kept my opinions to myself, especially regarding her friend's extreme views and immature behavior, since it didn't directly affect me. That is, until it suddenly did. A few months back, my wife started nudging me to pigeon more around the house. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, let me clarify. We do share household responsibilities and parenting duties. True, she does a bit more since she's a stay-at-home mom, but I handle a lot of the cooking, breakfast, and dinner, with lunch being her territory for herself and our sons, trash, laundry, and I make sure our bathrooms are sparkling every week. Plus, I assist with our kids' homework. Despite our system, she argued that my efforts were lacking and demanded more from me, suggesting I should take on nearly all household and parenting tasks. After numerous attempts at dialogue to understand her expectations, our conversations seemed futile. The topic of divorce even came up more than once, which felt like a low blow. The situation escalated during an evening out with friends when she accused me of not contributing enough and likened herself to a domestic servant using her own words. I'll admit, I was furious. Here's where I might have crossed a line. Instead of addressing it right away, the following day I spoke to my boss about reducing my work hours for a while, citing stress as the reason. And so, I took charge of all household duties. I prepared breakfast, made lunch for the boys, cleaned the house thoroughly, washed every dish multiple times, and more. My wife was ecstatic, telling her friend she had finally trained me. For about a month, she didn't contribute to any household tasks. Then, she started to miss our date nights and complained about wanting professional nail care, which I had removed from our budget to manage finances. I suggested a movie night at home and offered to paint her nails, which she didn't like. When I proposed she could work part-time to afford such luxuries, she reacted as if I had suggested something outrageous. She then suggested I work more to cover her personal expenses, telling me to be a man, which I found insulting. I questioned if she'd be open to resuming our shared chore schedule, helping her realize the connection between my work hours and our household dynamic. She accused me of being manipulative and even labeled it as financial abuse. I've been firm until now, but I'm starting to doubt my approach, wondering if it was somewhat deceitful. So, am I the a-hole? Update: I've never faced a dilemma quite like this before. As someone who overcame addiction myself, I navigated those challenges without the responsibility of children. To provide some context, which I couldn't detail from a previous post due to search limitations, my wife and I had a significant confrontation. During this, she confessed to struggling with substance use for several months. We've agreed that she will enter rehab, a process we're currently organizing. The question that keeps me up at night is how to discuss this with our children without leading them to view their mother negatively or, even more concerning, causing them to inherit my current state of distress. I'm adamant about not deceiving them, as my wife prefers, yet I'm at a loss for how to proceed without shattering their image of her or harming them emotionally. I'm navigating this situation without a clear direction and have found it nearly impossible to rest since everything came to light. I would greatly appreciate any guidance or advice. Thank you in advance. Update 2. For more context, as my profile suggests, I was driving my wife to the rehab center we chose together. On the way, she was furiously yelling at me. She couldn't believe I was humiliating her by explaining our situation to our sons and by insisting she inform her dealer/friend that their relationship and substance use must end. She accused me of not wanting her to go to rehab, calling me a controlling monster, and arguing that my threats of divorce and seeking primary custody of our children were extreme. I endured her outbursts silently for as long as possible, until I reached my breaking point. In a moment of intense emotion, I yelled back. I reminded her that the woman I married would have done anything to keep such influences away from her sons. I expressed how her current behavior, not just the addiction, was pushing me towards leaving. I told her that she was turning into the very person she feared becoming, reminiscent of her own mother, and endangering our sons in the process. Admitting these harsh truths made me feel a sense of relief, seeing her realize the gravity of her actions. She continued to argue, calling me abusive, but her heart didn't seem in it. I'm considering speaking to a lawyer. I don't want our marriage to end, but I'm uncertain if our relationship can recover from this. My lack of regret for our confrontation makes me question if staying married is best for either of us. I'm at a loss, frustrated by the destruction this situation has caused in our lives. Update 3. Before diving into this, I want to make it clear that this post is purely a way for me to vent. Normally, I wouldn't express myself like this, but I'm far from being okay, and I need to release these toxic thoughts before they consume me. I found out she was cheating. The person she's been getting drugs from sent me videos of her intimately dancing with another man, who frankly looks despicable. I'm utterly shattered. My sons are currently staying with my mom, and I've taken the upcoming week off from work. I've reached my limit. I've never felt such intense anger in my life. The smugness of her drug-dealing acquaintance, sending the video with a message implying I'm easily replaceable to her, was the last straw. Well, her days of taking advantage of me are over. I found the suggestion that she might need Medicaid for her treatment ironically amusing. I'm officially done. I saved the video immediately and plan to consult a lawyer as soon as possible. I'm keeping this quiet for now because I want to handle everything correctly. I'm incredibly grateful for the foresight my parents had in insisting on a prenuptial agreement, which included a clause for infidelity that seemed harsh at the time. Experiencing betrayal like this is new to me, and it's driving me to the edge. I never imagined she could stoop so low. I'm struggling to cope, unable to eat, and I even broke over a decade of sobriety last night. Upon waking, I realized I was on the brink of a downward spiral and poured out the remaining alcohol. My sons can't afford to have both parents in rehab. I'm teetering on the edge of losing it completely. And for those sending private messages advising me to remove my posts or criticizing me for sharing my personal issues here, please understand this is my only outlet. Your attempts to silence me will not succeed. This platform is the only place I feel I can openly discuss what I'm going through. Update 4. For more on what's been happening, you can check my other posts. But the short story is, I didn't know about my wife's addiction until she told me. She went to rehab, and then I found out she was also cheating. A lot. I've started the process of getting a divorce, not just because of the cheating, but because all of this together is too much. I can't even stand the thought of being near her, let alone try to fix things. I moved all her stuff to another room and got rid of any hidden drugs I found. I also took her off our bank accounts. I talked to our kids in a way that didn't make their mom out to be the bad guy. I wanted them to know they're my world, no matter what. Then she came back home. The kids were still at camp, a gift from my mom for their birthday. She was very quiet, looking down from the moment I picked her up until we got home. I showed her to the guest room without saying much, and she started crying before she even walked in. For the next few weeks, I let her settle in. I tried to stay calm and neutral, but I think she sensed something was up. I wanted to give her time to adjust to being home again. I remember how overwhelming it was for me when I left rehab, with everything coming at me all at once. Eventually, I asked her to sit down with me on the couch. I told her that I couldn't stay married to her and that I wanted a divorce. Her reaction caught me off guard. She didn't say anything, just nodded and cried quietly while I talked. I explained that I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't be her husband anymore. I suggested that maybe we should both just focus on being the best parents we can be. I made it clear to her that I wasn't going to force her out. I mentioned our prenup, saying the divorce should be straightforward. I told her she could start looking for a job and that once she found one, I'd help her get an apartment. After that, she went in her room. I thought maybe she needed some space, so I let her be. She didn't come out for dinner, and I debated whether to check on her or give her more space. Eventually, I knocked on her door to see if she wanted something to eat. To cut a long story short, she somehow got hold of pills, either brought them in or had them stashed away, and overdosed. She was dead for a few minutes in the ambulance and is now in a medically induced coma. The doctors aren't sure about the extent of the brain damage. I feel like the worst person on earth. I keep thinking I should have kept quiet, just dealt with everything internally and stayed. I blame myself for what happened, and it's tearing me apart. My love for her isn't the same, but I'm deeply sorry for all she's been through. It's just too much. I haven't told my sons yet. I'm thinking of waiting until they return from camp to give them a bit more time without this burden. I'm sorry if my writing isn't clear. I don't have the strength to edit. I just needed to share this. Final update. I have to share some very sad news. My wife passed away. It's been a while since I've posted, and I'm sorry for that. I guess it's understandable why I couldn't bring myself to update anything. Despite what many thought about her possibly manipulating me, none of that mattered in the end. When she woke up from the coma, we spent days just talking and crying together. She went back into rehab, and afterward, we tried both couples and individual therapy. She seemed happier and healthier, and for a while, I thought we had moved past the worst of it. I didn't share updates because I was afraid of the backlash, and I struggle with handling confrontation. She promised to communicate openly with me if there was ever anything on her mind. Things seemed to be on the right track, and I saw no signs of her relapsing. Tragically, she overdosed at a friend's house while I was at work and passed away there. The friend hesitated to call for help, and it was actually her boyfriend who finally convinced her to call an ambulance. To my knowledge, neither of them faced immediate consequences, though the friend was later arrested for dealing. People advised me to go to the police, but I doubted it would change anything, given my concerns about how the situation might be handled. I've been really lost lately. I started smoking again, which I had quit before we got married because she didn't like it. Now, I can't stand the smell either, but it gives me some comfort. My boys are in therapy, trying to cope with their loss. The youngest ones still talk about her, but my oldest is just angry. He keeps his feelings from his brothers, but he's open with me, even when it's hard to hear. Despite everything, my wife loved our boys more than anything. They were her world. I miss her so much that it hurts to breathe. Coming home to silence instead of music is the worst. Sometimes, I just sit in my car and cry, knowing she won't be inside. I can't bring myself to clear out her things from the bathroom. It's too painful to even think about. Writing has been tough, but I felt the need to share something with Valentine's Day coming up. Driving home, I caught myself thinking about buying flowers, only to remember there's nowhere to bring them but to her grave. The cost of roses seems so trivial now. I just want to say, if you have someone you love, cherish them. Do something special for them tomorrow, for me. It doesn't have to be big, just a moment to show you're truly there for each other. Dance in your living room, share a book, anything that feels real and good. It sounds cheesy, and if she were here, my wife would make fun of me. But it's true, life is incredibly short. And isn't that something?